Alright everybody, and welcome to this new tutorial in which I will show you how to create this super cool 3D effect for your website. In order to get started, we are going to kick this off with just a simple HTML template right here. So we have not much going on except for an HTML tag, head, body, and that's it. For the image itself, we are going to need an image like this one. I downloaded this one from Unsplash, which is a royalty-free website where you can download all kinds of free images. Now the thing with this image is the original version looks like this, okay? So it has essentially a house here in the bottom right corner, and it has this bush in the bottom left corner here. And if we go to our demo website, you can see that while I scroll, the house on the right and the bush on the left, it's kind of moving, right? You can see it pretty well if you have a look at the church here on the right and compare the distance of the church to the house. So while I scroll, the distance is changing. So that's what's creating this cool 3D effect, because the bush and the house and also the text here in the middle are moving at a different speed compared to the background, right? So when I scroll, the scrolling speed is just a little bit different. So the thing now here is you need to convert this image into 3 pieces. And there's a great tutorial by DevEd here on YouTube who shows you how to do this in Photoshop. And essentially, I'm just showing you here how to do the coding part. So check out his YouTube channel. I'm going to link it here down below in the description box. And when you're done with that, just come back here and have a look at the code. So as I said, I've already done this. As you can see, the bush is gone and the house on the right itself, and we have just left the landscape image. The bush here we have as a transparent image, right? So this is very important. Same thing for the house. And as you can see, I've done a very lousy job here cutting this out, but well, this is just a demo, so it's going to be good enough. But to be also totally honest, I don't think this has to be too perfect, because if you go back to the image, you can tell that this is blending in with the background actually pretty well. And even if I did a lousy job, that's probably good enough. So let's have a look at the code, shall we? First thing, we should probably add a title image, title tag, right? So I'm going to call this 3D test, right? And then we're going to need 2 things. So one is a style sheet and a script. So this is not too fancy, right? This is a, style sheet. And we're going to reference our styles.css like that. Link. And we're also going to need a script, which is just a normal JavaScript file, like that. The styles.css we already have here on the left side, and I'm going to just add a script.js file, which is empty, like that. The styles.css, I've already added a little bit of CSS to it, and you will see what this is in a bit, but I swear to you, it's not a lot. Super simple stuff. However, before we dive into the CSS, we have to add some markup, right? So we need one main tag. I'm going to call this the wrapper, because it's basically wrapping everything we have on our page. And then I'm going to add the text, okay? So, or maybe the title if you want to call it like that. So it's div class, and I call it just text. And in this case, as you can see, I'm calling it brief. So if I reload the page here, yeah, so this is what we have so far. We only have the text and nothing else on our website. Next, we're going to need the images, right? So image class. So then this is going to be our landscape image. So essentially the background image without the house and without the bush. And this is called the landscape.jpg. Is it JPEG? Yes, it is. Okay, great. I'm going to copy this. And then we need to add our two other images, which are the bush and the house. So I'm just going to copy this and rename it. So we have our bush, like that, and the house. Okay, so I'm going to save it and see if it worked. And there we go. So we have our text and our background image. And for some reason, I didn't find the, oh yeah, okay. So these two are PNGs because they're transparent, right? The background image is not transparent, it's a JPEG. Okay, so here we are. Now we have our background image and the two PNGs. So let's go to our CSS, right? Let's have a look here. I'm going to move this to the right so we can see both the HTML and the CSS. And as you can see, I've edited already a little bit just to save some writing here. So the first part here, this will just reset our style sheet. We just get rid of any unnecessary margining paddings for the HTML, the body, and the div. Because if we didn't have this, so I can actually show you how this looks like if I remove it, we have this ugly space here on the left and on the top, and we don't want that, right? So I'm going to put this back in. And I've put in a nice font family here, starting with Helvetica Neue, which will be our primary image, our primary font family here, and a couple of others for other operating systems. Right. So first thing we're going to need is we're going to set the background image, background color for our page. So we want this to be black, like completely black. And any color for text should be just plain white. So save it, check it out. Okay, this is great. Another thing we are going to need are two variables here. So I hope you are familiar with CSS variables. And one is called image offset. I'm going to set this to -50 pixels. And another is called text offset, -120 pixels. I'm going to show you in a second what we need these for. Next, we're going to apply some styles to our wrapper. So this is our main container here. So I'm going to say .wrapper. And we're going to give it a position relative. And we want it to span 100% of our page width. So let's have a look. So this looks great. Going back to our code here. Yeah, so let's add some CSS styles to our text element, right? So our title here. So I'm going to go .text. And we want this element to be positioned absolute, right? Because it needs to float on top of our landscape background image. It has a white color. Whoops. Like that. We're going to set a font size of 100 pixels. We want it to be in the middle, right? So we're going to align it in the center. And we want the font to be very slim. Did I type this correctly? Font width? No. Oh my god. What did I do? Width. Oh, wait. It's weight, not width. Yeah, I always get this wrong for some reason. Coding for 10 years and still doing this mistake. However, so we also want this to span 100% in terms of width. So this is the trick we're going to use here to put this into the center of our wrapper, because we do set text line center, and if it's spanning 100% width, we have it perfectly aligned. Next thing we're going to do is actually, let me save this here and let's have a look. Okay, so that's where we are right now. We have the text in the center, but we also want to position it like vertically centered, right? in the middle of our background image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a simple trick here. I'm going to say top 50%. Okay, save it. And now it's a little bit too far down, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it back up a little bit. And I'm going to just say margin top. And remember this variable that we used here, the text offset. So this is what we're going to use now. So I'm going to say var. I'm going to put this in. So this is now going to move the text up a little bit. And this position is actually great because while we move the website later while scrolling, this text is going to move up a little bit. All right, so far so good. And next thing is we have a look at our landscape image, like that. And all we're going to do is we just set it to 100% width, and that's it. Have a look if it works. Perfect. Next, we have a look at our bush. So similar thing with the text. So we're going to position it absolutely, because we need it to hover on top of our landscape image. We want it to be in the bottom left corner, right? So I'm going to set left to 0, and bottom, I mean, you could set it to 0, and I'm going to do this just for demo purposes, and I'm going to reload it. Now you can see that this is not looking great. And also later we're going to need to position this a little bit offset from our image. And that's why I'm not going to pick 0 here, and instead I'm going to use I'm going to use the variable that we created earlier, but I'm not going to use the text offset. Instead, I'm going to use the image offset. So we're going to offset it by -50 pixels, like that. Okay, so it's still going to be in the bottom left corner, but it's going to be offset just a little bit. Next thing, our horse, it's going to be extremely similar. Actually, I think we can copy most of the stuff from here. Just paste it over. So it's also going to be positioned absolutely. So we want it in the bottom right corner. So I'm going to change this from left to right. And the bottom we keep with the we stay with the image offset. All right. Now I'm going to save this and reload. And we can already see that this is pretty close. And you can tell that both images, the house and the bush, are a little bit, they start a little bit more from the bottom compared to the landscape. And this is due to the offset value, right? So this thing, that's what's creating the offset at the bottom. And we need this because when we scroll up and down and the house moves up a little bit, we need a little bit of clearance down here, right? Otherwise, it's going to kind of start hovering, a little bit too far above the landscape image. All right. Next thing we are going to need is another element, and we're going to call this the bottom element. Okay. So I'm going to put this here. I'm going to give it a class, call it bottom. And this is going to have a little bit of text. So I've prepared a little bit of lorem ipsum text, right? So if you don't know what lorem ipsum is, this is just, random text. Gonna paste it in here, and you could use any kind of text you want. Lorem ipsum has just been created to, it doesn't make any sense, but it kind of looks like real text. Okay, so I'm going to save it and go back. Okay, so now we have our text down here. Now what we want is we want this text to, be displayed in 3 columns, so it looks really nice. And also we want the edge here at the bottom where the bush and the house appear. We want this to kind of blend over and to be covered a little bit by a shadow. So I'm going to do that now and go back to our CSS. dot bottom. And I'm going to position this one relatively, because this one we don't want to hover on top of the landscape. We want it to be underneath the landscape image. The background we want to be black. And then I'm going to add a little bit of box shadow here. And I've already prepared this. If you don't know how to create a box shadow, there's this thing called box shadow generator. Just Google, CSS box shadow generator, and you can use a nice UI to create this code. And you can just copy and paste it into your source. So I'm going to save this for a second. Go back here. And now you can see that we have this little bit of blend here at the bottom of the landscape image. Hope you can see it. So this is our box shadow, all right? And then I'm going to move it up just a little bit. Top minus 40 pixels. Go back. Okay. Now we have covered the bottom part of our house and our bush with our bottom container. And the shadow, is just covering a little bit of that overlay part. All right, so far so good. We also want this to be 100% width. And the height we just set to 500 pixels. You could probably just set it to anything else as well. Now, you might remember that I said that we want this to be displayed in 3 columns, right? And there's a simple trick for doing that. I'm going to use flags, display flags. And the flex direction I'm going to set to row. And also I want a little bit of space at the bottom, so I'm going to say margin bottom 200 pixels. I'm going to save it and reload. And now you can see that we have these nice 3 columns here, and we also have a little bit of space at the bottom. Now, what I don't like about this is that, the columns are very close to each other, so there's like no room to breathe between the text. Looks like I got a text message, but that's fine. And so what I'm going to do is, I'm going to apply a little bit of text to all these div items here within the bottom container. I'm going to say, okay, these items I want to be flags, and I want to add a little bit of padding here. 40 pixels. I'm going to set the font size to 20 pixels. Font weight, I'm going to increase it a little bit to 300. Again, this depends on the font family that you use. However, you can now adjust this very well. And just to have things look nicely, I'm going to increase the line height to 1.4. All right, so, oh yeah, also some little bit darker color here. I'm going to save it like that and reload. And now you can see that we have this really nice looking typography here. And we have a lot more space between the columns. Now the problem here is that the space here between the first and the second column is a little bit too much. Same thing between the second and the third column here. All right. So I'm just going to fix this real quick. So I'm going to say div nth child, and I'm going to select the second column. Oops, like that. I'm going to say, okay, I still want those 30 pixels like here, but I don't want any of these here. So I'm going to say 0 here. Save it like that and reload. Okay, now we can see that we have equal padding everywhere, also between the columns. Now I think this looks really, really nicely so far. Now we just have to get that 3D effect, right? And for that we need a little bit of JavaScript. So I'm going to open this JavaScript file here. I'm going to drag it to the bottom like that, so we can still see our other source code. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to define 3 variables. So the first one you already know, so it's our image offset. And as you might remember, let me scroll up, we did set it to 50%, minus 50%. And the same thing for the text offset, which is set to minus 120%. So image offset is minus 50%, sorry, pixels, not percent. Actually, minus 50. And we define another variable, which we call text offset, which is minus 120 for now. Another variable that we're going to need is called drag. So what does drag do? Drag actually defines the speed of our 3D effect. So the higher this is, the slower the effect will be. And if you set this to a lower value like 2, the 3D effect will be a little bit faster. So I found out, just by trying out 8 works pretty well. So I'm going to go with that. Next, I'm going to set an event listener like that for DOM content loaded. So we need to know when everything is loaded in our website. And I'm going to add an error function like that. Okay. Then we need to get our text and our images from our DOM. So we're just going to do document.get element by class name. And we know that the text simply has class text, right? So I'm just going to use that. And we just know that there's just one of these elements. So I'm just going to pick the first one from our array. And we're going to do the same thing with our bush and our house, like that. Bush and house. Same thing here. Okay. So now we need to check, whenever the user scrolls, we need to move these 3 elements just a little bit, okay? So I'm going to add another event listener to the window element this time. And we're going to listen to the scroll element event. Add another error function here. And we're going to get an event. So in this case, I just call it SE for scroll event. Next, I'm going to calculate the new offset. So every time the user scrolls a little bit, we need to adjust the offset of our bush and the house. So I'm going to call this new offset. I'm going to use the image offset variable that we have created earlier. So it's this one. Okay. And I'm going to add window.scroll y, which is going to return me the vertical position of our website, and divide it by our drag, right? So this is the drag variable over here, like that. And what I'm going to do here is we're going to set the style for the house. Whoops, that's not what I wanted. Style.bottom to the new offset. And we're just gonna append the string pixel to it. Okay, so essentially we are overriding. Let's see, we are overriding this variable here. Oh, sorry, it's not a variable. It's a style within our CSS. And then do the same thing with our bush. New offset. Whoops. Plus pixel. And that's it. Now, we don't always want to do this. We just want to do this until our offset has reached 0 or even less. So if the new offset is smaller than 0, like that. I'm going to save it and go back and reload. And as you can see, if I scroll now, the house here is moving, right? And if I scroll all the way down, at some point it will stop. See? Now they stopped moving. And this is what this if clause is doing here. Right? If I would not set this if, so if I remove the if like that and reload, it would just continue moving up, 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 up and at some point it would just reveal the bottom part of the house. Now, if that's what you want, that's totally fine. You just keep in mind that your house will be constantly floating up. So I personally prefer to put this if clause right here. And notice that our bush is not moving, and that's because I have a small typo here. This needs to be called offset. Save, go back. And if I now scroll down, you can see our bush on the left is also moving while I scroll down, and it's also stopping at some point. One minor thing we should fix is that our text is not moving yet, right? So we do the same thing. I'm going to call this variable new text offset and set it to new text offset minus window to scroll y divided by drag. So we're going to do pretty much the same thing as we did over here. We're just going to use the new text offset, which we have defined here, which has a different value compared to the image offset. All right. And then we're just gonna, set the margin bottom to the new text offset, and we just tell it that these are pixels. Save it, go back, reload, and if I now move this, you should be able to see that our text is moving. For some reason, it's not moving. So let me see. Oh, it's the margin top. It's not margin bottom. So let me reload. Oh, and it's still not moving. So let's have a look what's wrong. I can see already there's an error here. New text offset before initialization. Okay, let's have a look. Yep. Okay, so this should not be new text offset. This should be just text offset. Oops. Save it. Go back. Reload. And now the breathe thing here. Now this is moving while I scroll. See? All right, so that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this quick tutorial. I'm gonna link the source code in my GitHub repository to this project, so you can have a look at that, and also have a look at DevEd's brilliant tutorial how to actually extract the house and the bush from the background image right here. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and what I'm really curious about is, what is your favorite eye candy effect? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you're interested in more of these kinds of videos, click on the subscribe button in the top right corner of the screen, and I'll see you on the next video.